Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Finally, after years of delay, this evening EDF agreed the deal on Hinkley C. But now there's a glitch. Theresa May's new government wants some thinking time. The VIP parties at EDF have been postponed and the media interviews have been cancelled. But what's the alternative? There is no other scheme on the table. This one has been complex and fraught enough. Now a consortium of EDF and the Chinese company CGN are ready to go. There have been worries over EDF's debt and the fact that the deal involved a 35-year contract to pay EDF £92.50 for each megawatt hour of energy it generates, more than double the present-day cost. Our business editor Helen Thomas is here with the latest. Who knew?
Yet another curveball for this project. So late tonight, the new Business and Energy Secretary, Greg Clark, came out with a statement. He reaffirmed commitment to new nuclear, but he said the government wanted to consider carefully all the component parts of this project. A decision now pushed back to the early autumn. Now, the official line is this isn't a delay, this isn't a rethink, this is a new Prime Minister, a new Secretary of State wanting to make sure they're on top of all the details. But this wasn't expected, and what we're being told is that this is Theresa May, new Prime Minister, stamping her authority on these really big, complicated decisions. It's worth saying that there's some suggestion that she discussed this with President Hollande in Paris, but it did seem to come as a surprise to EDF this evening. They had a full day of media interviews and so on planned. That's all off. Is it finally happening? The board of French utility EDF has approved building an £18 billion new nuclear power station at Hinkley Point in Somerset. French unease over the project continues. One board member resigned today ahead of the vote. And in the UK, well, who knows? The government late tonight seemed to put the brakes on the project. It will make a decision in the autumn. Hinkley could be the first nuclear power station built in the UK since the mid-1990s. So would it supercharge the UK's energy outlook? Or are the lights of the country's energy policy flickering? Here's the problem. The UK needs new generating capacity to replace ageing coal and nuclear power stations that will shut down. Then there's increased electricity demand. The plan is that this comes from a mix of new energy sources, including renewables, and new nuclear power plants. And the requirement is about 95 gigawatts of new capacity. Remember, the UK government wants three things from its energy policy. It wants security of supply from a range of different generating types. It wants low or zero carbon options to help meet climate change goals. And it wants cost effectiveness. After all, it's consumers that ultimately end up bearing the cost of building new capacity. In theory, Hinkley does help meet some of those goals. It's big, capable of supplying about 7% of the UK's electricity or powering 6 million homes. It's also low carbon, and nuclear power is always on, 24 hours a day, whatever the weather. It should even create thousands of jobs over the 10 years it'll take to build. But the first Hinkley headache is the cost. Sure, EDF pays for its construction and takes the risk that it runs late or over budget. But their incentive is a guaranteed price of £92.50 per megawatt hour for the electricity produced over the 35-year life of the plant. That's way above current wholesale electricity prices, dragged down by low fossil fuel prices. Making up the difference was estimated to cost about £6.1 billion when the contract was signed back in October 2013, according to the National Audit Office. Earlier this year, it put the cost of those top-ups at £29.7 billion.
Well, it will be the most expensive power station that's ever been built anywhere in the world, and the power that future consumers will pay for, it will be a very, very high price. What we do know is that if Hinkley was operating today, it would be producing power around about 2.5 times the current wholesale price, which means that the consumers will be paying it a subsidy of about £1.5 billion a year. And that does seem a very, very high price, even taking into account the benefits you get for security of supply and tackling climate change.
The second worry is more fundamental. Will it work? The type of reactor EDF plans for Hinkley is proving fiendishly complicated to build. Its ones in France and in Finland are running years late and are billions over budget. Maybe EDF has learned valuable lessons, but there's another concern, that the government's strategy for building several more nuclear plants after Hinkley means the UK won't reap all the benefits.
What a country normally does when they do that is they choose one particular reactor type and they build identical numbers one after each other, because that's how you get the economies of scale, that's how you learn through the industrial process and you keep costs down. The UK government has this bizarre strategy of allowing several different reactor types to be built at the same time. So actually we could find ourselves in a few years' time with 4 different reactor types being built by 5 different manufacturers.
And even if Hinkley is finished in 10 years' time, will it turn out to be the type of power, the type of technology we actually need? The supposed advantage of Hinkley is that it provides a lot of power all of the time.
Actually, though, that's not what the UK wants anymore. It needs flexible generating capacity that goes up and down to complement varying amounts of wind and solar and hydro coming onto the electricity grid. Hinkley is incredibly unresponsive. It cannot adjust its output. Renewable energy, we can't easily combine renewable energy and Hinkley Point.
Better energy storage could in future help smooth out the unpredictable peaks and troughs of power supply. And in an interconnected world, there's more ability to adjust demand down when capacity is tight. Hinkley was meant to light the way to a new modern energy system. The risk is that the UK ends up with an expensive and outdated piece of kit.
Helen Thomas. Well, I'm joined now from Hinkley by its constituency MP Ian Liddle-Granger, who's been involved in these negotiations the last 9.5 years, and also from our Bristol studio by the Green Party South West MEP Molly Scott-Cato, a patron of the Stop Hinkley campaign group. Good evening to both of you. First of all, Ian Liddle-Granger, when did you find out that there was going to be a delay?
I was actually here on site at Hinkley C, and we were discussing about the various sort of parts to the deal with the team here, and we got the note saying that the Prime Minister wanted to have a look at this and go through it in her own way.
And so that must have been a bit of a shock for you.
Well, I probably should have guessed it. She did. I mean, Theresa, as we know, has her own mind. She's been a very successful Home Secretary. She checks everything, and I know that from stuff I've sent her as a constituency MP. And she wants to make sure this is right. We're talking about 3 countries. We're talking about an enormous deal for United Kingdom, for France and for China. She wants to make sure it's the right job, and that's what she's doing. She's checking it as all good Prime Ministers should.
That very much is sticking to the party line, but she has been Home Secretary for a rather long time in the government, so she knew it was coming. So actually, it might suggest that they might want to make some changes.
No, this is a 90,000-page deal. I've been on this, as you said. I've done 4 Prime Ministers, and I don't know how many Secretaries of State, and still I'm learning about it. So I think she's every right to do it. Amber Rudd is now the Home Secretary, and obviously Andrea Leadsom is also one of her Secretaries of State. Yes, of course she's seen it going across. But until you get into the complexities of a deal like this, you don't see the whole picture. You need to look at it carefully, and that's what this lady's doing.
Molly Scott-Cato, this presumably came as a surprise to you too.
Well, for me, it was actually quite a pleasant surprise, and I think it indicates that we've had rather weak government over the past 6 years, and this deal with Hinkley hasn't been scrutinised properly. It seems that the Prime Minister's now getting cold feet, and I hope she goes away and scrutinises the deal carefully. And I think if she does that, she'll see that the price is ridiculously high, that it's not the kind of energy system that we need for the 21st century, and also that it's a big risk to bring the Chinese Communist Party into having an important role in our nuclear industry. So for all those reasons, I think she'll be changing her mind about this in the autumn.
Well, if she does change her mind about it, chances are she is not necessarily going to go for renewables. She may go for another kind of nuclear deal.
Well, renewables are by far the most advanced technology that can bring on stream quickly. And the thing is, Hinkley,
But excuse me, can I just double check something? They're not going to bring the amount of consistent energy that's going to be needed to make up the 7% that is desperately needed in the next 10 years.
Well, neither will Hinkley, because we won't get any electricity from Hinkley, and even if it goes ahead and the reactor works until 2027, and that's likely to be delayed. So the only technologies we have that work are renewables, and we just need to seriously invest in those and bring them on stream, and that will actually create far more jobs, about 120,000 jobs according to a report I commissioned, compared to just 900 with Hinkley. So it's better for our economy, it's better for jobs, and it's much safer and cleaner as a way of generating our electricity.
Just coming back to Hinkley now, has the government boxed itself in on this, or is there any room for manoeuvre? You said that Theresa May, rightly being a very thorough Prime Minister, wants to look over it. What if she doesn't like what she sees? What if she wants to renegotiate the price? What if she wants another nuclear deal, wants to bring another country in?
No, I don't think that's what she's doing. In fact, I know that's not what she's doing. I've just spoken to Greg Clark. She is the person she is, and she wants to make sure. Greg Clark has briefed her, and I'm getting in touch with her PPS tomorrow and ask for a meeting with her so I can go through anything she needs answering. That's not what she's doing, and I think that's blatantly obvious. What she's wanting to do is make sure it's right, and that's what she's going to do. And
if she's actually going to do this thoroughly and make sure it's right, then you can't possibly be 100% sure it's going to go ahead as is, because then you're not suggesting for 1 minute that she might make changes. And I wonder what Greg Clark actually said to you.
Well, Greg Clark said the Prime Minister's going to look at it. She is aware of the situation. She knows perfectly well. She saw Holland, a few days ago, so they discussed it. But she's one of these people that will look into everything she has across her desk. And that is absolutely the way it should be. So, you know, you can say it's the party line. I think it's the common sense approach. And Mary Catter, whatever her name is, can say what she likes. But I applaud the Prime Minister. This is strong government, not weak government.
Well, Molly Scott Cato, just coming back to you on that.
Molly.
There are some issues, as we know, about EDF. We know there are issues about this particular type of nuclear technology because of the other plants it has, which it is not actually, which are not feeding electricity at the moment and are way behind and over budget. Just let's say that renewables are not the possibility that you wish them to be. Is there another way forward if it's going to be low carbon energy?
Well, I can't really say that because I know that renewables can do the job. But I think you're right to draw attention to the fact that there are problems with EDF. And what it turns out now the politics is starting to unravel here, is that EDF are actually using the Hinkley scheme as a way of recapitalising the business. The French government will be pouring a lot of money in. And that may actually break European competition rules. So the whole deal may itself turn out to be illegal. But I think also what we're seeing is that we haven't had a proper energy policy, a strategic energy policy in this country for several decades. And our planners are really being left behind by other countries where they're using smart demand systems, actually reducing demand. McKinsey said we could reduce demand by 1/3 if we just tried to match supply of energy with demand for energy, and also use energy storage a lot better.
You heard in the film that the problem with the Hinkley C project is that it cannot actually turn on and off electricity, Ian Liddell-Granger. You had the representative from Switch thing saying it doesn't do the job that will actually be needed in 10 years' time, where there'll be different flows of electricity. There needs to be a much more sophisticated form of nuclear energy.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the film because I'm here live at Hinkley, but I think what you're suggesting is that we need to change to modular system. Is that what they're saying? I don't think that's the case at all. What we're talking about is raw energy here, and this will produce enough electricity for 7% of homes in Britain. It is a big, powerful beast, and that's what we're building here, and I think we should. I don't know what the film said, but I've got absolutely confidence in this. I spent 9.5 years on this. I've lived it for over half my time as an MP, so I've got faith in it, and I think we should get on with it.
Thank you both very much indeed for joining us.